No one saw this coming back, and absolutely no one predicted the detonation that followed. In under 48 hours, a long-buried DNA allegation tied to Meghan Markle and her children leapt from faint murmurs into a worldwide inferno. This wasn't confined to Britain or the US. It ignited simultaneously across Europe, Australia, South America, everywhere at once. And this time, it felt different. This wasn't idle chatter about fashion choices, interviews, or recycled royal feuds. This story went straight for the most sensitive ground of all, the very identity and legitimacy of Meghan's children, Archie Mountbatten Windsor and Lilibet Mountbatten Windsor. What made it even more unsettling was how it began. Not with a viral tweet. Not with a screaming tabloid cover. Not even with a click-hungry influencer. It surfaced through a document, grainy, partially obscured, officially unverified, yet chillingly precise in its wording. The image was said to be moving quietly inside a closed circle of royal analysts, the kind of discreet space where palace-related material has a history of appearing long before the public ever sees it. And buried inside that document was a single line that flipped the entire narrative on its head: prepare for increased inquiry regarding lineage integrity narratives. That wasn't the language of gossip. That wasn't internet slang. That was the cold, measured tone of institutions. While Montecito was reportedly spiraling into chaos, something far more unnerving was unfolding an ocean away. Nothing happened at all. Within palace walls, there were no alarms, no emergency briefings, no hurried damage control, only deliberate, disciplined silence. One insider allegedly captured the mood with a sentence that sent chills down spines. "No one here is surprised. These stories always resurface." That one remark spoke volumes. Sources close to the palace claim whispers about DNA and the Sussex children have lingered for years, not because they're believed, but because the way events unfolded left too much room for doubt. And here's the harsh reality: the palace doesn't consider this their responsibility. From their viewpoint, Harry and Meghan chose their own path. They walked away from royal protection. They demanded total control over their story. And with that decision came consequences. The palace will not step in, not today, not tomorrow, not ever. No clarifications, no denials, no quiet press cleanups. This silence isn't neglect, it's strategy. Every day the palace says nothing, the noise grows louder. And the Sussexes are left battling the blaze alone, precisely as the palace believes they asked to be. Now comes the part no one likes to admit. This story wasn't born overnight. It was assembled piece by piece over years. Roll the tape back. When Archie was born, the palace announced Meghan was in labor, only to reveal hours later that the baby had already arrived. Journalists were caught flat-footed. Palace staff were left scrambling. Even seasoned royal correspondents labeled it a communications catastrophe. A fiasco of communication opened the door, and then came the paperwork. The birth certificate surfaced next, quietly amended. Meghan's name swapped out for a formal title. Explanations shifted. Responsibility bounced between offices. No single answer ever settled. Then another break from tradition. The hospital photo moment vanished entirely. Meghan dismissed it as invasive, outdated, unnecessary, and many agreed. But that ritual existed for one reason: clarity. When it disappeared, clarity went with it. After that came the christenings. No confirmed church statements. No official imagery. No timelines anyone could verify. Just silence. Layer on top of that the inconsistencies: pregnancy details told one way in interviews, another in documentaries, another in podcasts, stories that almost matched, but not quite. And suddenly the situation crossed a line. Still no evidence. But something else took shape. A pattern. And once patterns repeat long enough, people stop brushing them off. That's the real crisis Meghan is facing now, not a single rumor, but the weight of everything that came before it. Because when a new spark hits, it doesn't fall on empty ground. It ignites years of unresolved questions. That's why this blaze never truly goes out. Here's where the conversation turns serious. When royalty is involved, DNA speculation isn't harmless chatter. It's not a meme. It's not petty scandal. It carries legal gravity, and Meghan Markle knows that better than anyone. Royal titles aren't permanent trophies. They're conditional. Archie and Lilibet only received prince and princess status after King Charles ascended the throne. And those titles hinge on one immovable pillar: confirmed royal lineage. If that lineage is ever formally questioned by a court, a governing authority, or an official inquiry, those titles can be frozen, reviewed, even reconsidered. That's not drama. That's protocol. The same rules apply to the line of succession. That list isn't ceremonial. It's a binding legal framework upheld by centuries of precedent. Even the hint of uncertainty can invite scrutiny. And that's the true nightmare, not because any claim is proven, but because once legal mechanisms engage, public relations become meaningless. Streaming contracts don't matter. Carefully worded statements don't matter. Sympathy doesn't matter. That's why this story rattled Meghan more than years of brutal headlines. Because this is the one narrative that refuses to stay in the gossip lane, and here's the crucial distinction. The rumor didn't claim answers. It claimed attention. Attention from reporters, from archivists, from people asking for documents, birth records, baptism confirmations, title grants. And once the world sensed that someone, somewhere, might be looking, everything cracked open. Old doubts surged back into view, questions that were never fully resolved the first time around. By the time Meghan's team began drafting responses, the storyline had already slipped beyond their control. Because once the public believes an investigation is underway, the question stops being if and becomes why.so. Why didn't this vanish like previous waves? Because it landed on accumulated history. For years, observers noted details that didn't align, conflicting announcements, modified records, skipped traditions, quiet revisions, unanswered gaps. Each moment alone seemed minor. Together, they formed a narrative. And when this latest rumor emerged, it didn't come quietly. It arrived carrying the past with it. Then there's the second factor, control. American outlets tread carefully. British media moves under legal restraint. But international press doesn't operate by Meghan's playbook. Once the story crossed borders, containment became impossible. Morning panels dissected it. European media framed it as an issue of legitimacy. Australian commentators openly questioned timelines. The dialogue shifted. This was no longer rumor, it was about systems, rules, and consequences, and then came the timing. As the internet erupted, turmoil reportedly unfolded inside Montecito. Insiders claim that the moment Meghan saw DNA investigation climbing global trends, the atmosphere changed instantly. Not confusion, not disbelief. Fury. Raised voices. Accusations. Her instinct wasn't to refute the claim, it was to find fault. Phones rang nonstop. Crisis teams were activated. Drafts demanded immediately. Names demanded. Control demanded back urgently. But it was already slipping away. Prince Harry's response couldn't have been more different. While Meghan burned with urgency, Harry withdrew. No shouting, no confrontation, just visible exhaustion. Sources describe him as hollowed out, like someone watching a slow-motion collision he knew he couldn't prevent. He tried to study the moment, allegedly murmuring, "It'll pass." It always does. That only made things worse. Meghan reportedly lashed out, accusing him of complacency, of weakness, of letting this narrative fester for years. Tension escalated. Harry stepped back. Meghan pressed forward. And in that clash, something deeper surfaced. This wasn't merely a PR emergency. It was a marriage under strain, responding to the same threat in opposite ways. Here's the truth few want to voice. This story may quiet down, but it won't disappear. Because the core issue isn't DNA, it's trust. For years, Meghan curated every chapter of her public story, selective interviews, controlled releases, polished narratives. That approach worked until it didn't. Because when people feel guided instead of informed, curiosity turns into suspicion. The palace has drawn its line. Silence. No rescue. No intervention. In their view, this is the price of independence. And the children, this is the tragedy. Archie and Lilibet were meant to represent renewal. Instead, they've become tethered to a controversy that could follow them for decades. Not because of who they are, but because of how their story unfolded. Now only 3 roads remain. 1. The noise fades only to return louder later. 2. An international reporter pushes deeper. 3. Meghan finally confronts it head-on, something she's avoided at all costs. Whatever comes next, this chapter is sealed into her legacy. Not because it's proven, but because history made it plausible. And that's why this story refuses to die.